Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my guide to IBDP BioSL NHL for May 2025 onwards. My name is Christopher Crisando, and let's start. So, the differences between SL and HL. So, basically, HL students have to study both SL and HL subjects, while SL students only have to study the SL subjects, the topics. HL students are encouraged by IB to spend an additional 90 hours because nearly half of the syllabus are for HL students. And some of the topics, like viruses and gene expression, are HL only. HL students also have to study for in order to answer more questions in the exam. So differences between Oxford and Hodder textbooks. Basically, to summarize, Oxford has more diagrams and they're more focused on key concepts. But on the other hand, Hodder is more detailed in each topic, and there are more paragraphs for explanations for those who prefer text based explanations. Pathways for studying. Um, you can study in the order of themes. For example, you move from theme A, B, C, and D. As you can see here, you move from unity and diversity to form and function, interaction and interdependence, and then finishing up with continuity and change. Moving this way, right? Or what some students prefer, uh, and which is the pathway that I used for my IB journey, which is in the order of organization, which is basically you study an increasing complexity of the organisms from basic molecules to structured environments, moving, as you can see, from molecules to cells to organisms, and then finishing with ecosystems. That way, you can link more between the topics rather than having to cut in between levels of organizations when you're doing theme to theme. So, what is paper one? Paper one is basically paper 1A is MCQ only, multiple choice questions only. And then for paper 1B, it's syllabus related database questions. As you can see, there's a 20 mark difference between paper one for HL and paper one for SL. And then moving on, these are some paper one tips. You can do IB past papers. You can do it through IB Docs or Examate if you have that. And then you can do IB specimen papers through IB Docs. You should also review your textbooks because there's quite usually they give you quite sometimes like a few days to study for bio paper one compared to studying paper two from paper one. So you this is perfect time, optimal time for you to be re-reviewing your textbooks, whether it's Harvard or Oxford. You can also review, say, my exam notes if you feel like you just need a bit of refresher. And then you should also do predicted papers made by Revision Dojo or BioLetters. And then for like very short reviews, you can go to ipass.gg and then do MCQ topical questions, which are randomized. But you can also select how many MCQ questions you want for each topic. So that's really good. And then this is something you must watch for Bio Paper 1B. It's 7 students every drawing in 2025 IB Biology. It gives like a brief explanation on how to draw every type of diagram you need to learn for Bio Paper 1. So the game plan for Paper 1 is basically make sure that you have a fixed amount of time for Paper 1A and Paper 1B. Don't waste too much time on one section and then not having enough time to do the other section. So in order to do this, you can just like circle any MCQ questions that you don't really know anything about, and then move on to the question, and then go back to the question later on. Otherwise, you're going to be losing marks in paper 1B. You should also highlight or like underline keywords of a question to avoid making careless mistakes, especially terminologies. And then also make sure that the number of statements are equal to the number of total points, or preferably n plus one, which means the total number of marks plus 1 mark. So if it's a 7 mark question or 4 mark question, you're writing, so for 7 marks, you're writing 8 mark answers. And then for the 4 mark questions, you're writing 5 mark answers. Okay. So now moving on to paper two. 2A is real world database questions, so you can't really study this at all. And then short answer questions, which are like basically more or less same like MCQ questions. These are very quite simple to answer. And then paper 2B, which are the ones where they're either they're made of each question is made of two 4 mark questions and one 7 mark question for a total of 15 marks. For SL, you pick one of three of these questions, but for HL, you have to pick two of three. So these are some paper two tips. Again, same thing. Study past papers and specimen papers from IB Docs or Exam 8, and then because due to the like, I think sorry, due to like only a few hours in between paper one and paper two. At this point for paper two, if you want to review save my exam notes and not the actual textbook anymore because you don't have time. Or if you want to save even more time, you can review through YouTube videos. But make sure you do have time to focus on predicted papers or past papers, um, so that you know how to answer these type of questions. So YouTube channels for quick reviewing. This could be elective learning, which is detailed and comprehensive, but some are for paid membership only. Serious revision, which is extensive, which have extensive discussions, but in a I would say monotonous voice. And then we have 7 student, which have summarized videos, but he does it in a conversational tone, which I prefer, but other students may prefer different ways of presenting information. So yeah, so it's up to you. Moving on for the game plan for paper two. Again, same. Provide fixed amount of time for both sections. Otherwise, you're gonna lose marks. Skip questions that you're not confident in, and then move on to the next. Make sure to highlight the keywords again to avoid careless mistakes. Make sure that the number of statements you write is equal to the number of total points or one additionally. And make sure that when you're doing paper 2B, you pick the questions in which you can answer most of the questions, most of the sub questions, and not just based on which question has the easiest 7 mark question, because it doesn't matter if you are able to get all the 7 marks, but then you lose 8 marks on the other two sub questions. So it's better to do all. And besides, you get like a few marks for just writing definitions and some keywords in 7 marks. So it's best to write to pick questions based on which ones you can do the most. Okay. Okay. So basically, for command terms, there's like define, which is give one meaning. Draw and scratch. Sketch means you have to use continuous lines. Uh, for to draw an image, at least help the empty space. Annotate or label is you basically use straight connecting lines and then write one word to label diagrams. List, obviously in bullet points. Measure, calculate, estimate. You use a calculator, ruler to find values. State, identify, determine, predict. Basically, they only want like one word or one answer, one explanation. And then for other comment terms like describe and outline, you answer according to the number of points. Distinguish just means differentiate. Any questions with analyze, comment, explain, or justify just means to explain what the question wants and then with reasons why. Compare obviously means similarities, contrast means differences. Construct such a design means demonstrate graphically through diagram or experimental setup or logically using like a flowchart. Okay, so for other comment terms, there's like deduce, which means conclude what the statements say with reasons, and then discuss or I will evaluate. Make means like make balanced arguments, both pros and cons should be there, and then you have to have a conclusion. For suggest, basically it just means you have to give a solution, hypothesis, or an answer. Okay, so now the process for scientific investigation for IAs and EEs. For first step is obviously to find a suitable RQ. Pick either microbiome, plant biology, or enzymes because anything with animals or humans have too many control variables that uh, clearly makes your entire experiment like not reliable. So pick one of these three, and then find a specific research question like species name, what dependent and independent variables you're using, what are the control variables, and what are the materials required. This is important. And then discuss with your teacher whether it can be done in your school because some schools don't really have the equipment that your research paper may suggest. such as rotary, evaporators, and etc. So make sure it can be done in your school, and make sure it's original, because maybe students, uh, your own classmates may have already picked this RQ. So that's why it's important to discuss with your teacher, so that you two don't accidentally do the same RQ. Also discuss with your teacher if you can start, or more research is needed. Maybe the teacher could think like you don't know enough methodology to know how to conduct this experiment. Maybe there's some things that your teacher should probably uh, let you know before you can start. Okay, next step is to conduct the experiment. Discuss every step with your teacher or the laboratory assistant, and make sure you learn each procedure and maybe take note of the details, so that you can write it in the methodology part of your essay, but also so that when you're doing it um, by yourself, you're not just gonna forget how to do things and then rely solely on the lab assistant. Make sure you know what safety procedures to follow. This is at of an utmost importance, especially if you're working alone. Also, record the results on a notebook or digitally. Otherwise, you're doing your experiment for absolutely nothing. You're gonna have to redo the experiments. Also, make sure to take photo of the results and experimental setup for the IA or EE. Otherwise, you're not gonna have any evidence to put in your essay. And also ask any concern you may have to your teacher. Otherwise, you're just going to be wasting time being stuck on something that you should be able to um, deal with when you talk with your teacher, right? And then the last part is obviously to write the essay, but students should probably do this while in the process of experimentation, while they're doing the experiment, except doing it like when they're done with the experiment at home. So uh, doing the experiments during school or in the day, but then writing the essay at night after school, so that what you do or what did you learn is it's not like forgotten, and then you can immediately put it into the essay. Research papers you can easily find using Google Scholar or Science Direct, or you can just do a simple Google search. Statements taken from research papers should be immediately cited. Otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of uh, links that you don't know, you forgot where you took them from, and you have to cite them all at once, and it's time consuming. I'm gonna be honest, it's really time consuming. uh, you can resolve any confusion by asking your teacher, like, where do I put this? How should this be formatted? Because your teacher has more experience than you, obviously, in either marking IB essays, or maybe they've done research papers in the past. It's also a good idea to cross check with your friends for any typos or formatting errors. Okay, so now when it comes to calculation of tables, font sizes for formulas or data within tables should be the same as the paragraphs, like the discussion paragraphs, explanatory paragraphs. Make sure that the cells of the tables are always center aligned as well, and the table is not split between pages, so it looks good, right? And then the headings should also be emboldened. One form of statistical analysis should also be used, either ANOVA, like one-way ANOVA, or two-way ANOVA, or Pearson's correlation test. Okay, moving on to citing. Citations can be in the form of either footnotes or in-text citations, right? You can pick either one. It's fine. They both do not contribute to the word count, so it's fine. So all images, graphical tools, and statistical tools used must be cited below the image or below the paragraph in which you use to find a value. And then the citation should also be in MLA format. This can be converted easily into MLA format using Cypress.com or Google Docs. And now scientific names should be italicized, genus should start with a capitalized letter, and species should start with an undercase letter. Um, you should also include significance of study, for especially for EE, like why is it necessary. Before moving on to background information, which is explaining each and every substance, variable, and its relevance to the study. And then you should also include methodology, right? Discuss the preliminary experiments you've done, step-by-step procedures, and safety, ethical, and environmental considerations. Like, what did you do to ensure that nothing is unethical or dangerous? And then moving on to data analysis, include both qualitative and quantitative analysis, like calculating the mean, standard deviation, uncertainty, percentage effectiveness, etc. And then also include statistical analysis here in order to calculate the significance and, and reliability of the results. Moving on to conclusion, explain whether your hypothesis was proven correct or not, right? And also explain why the results of your experiment prove or disprove your hypothesis using scientific explanations found within research papers. So you need to explain the mechanism, actions, and scientific reactions, all that. And then make sure to back up your explanations with similar research papers by comparing their results with yours, right? And then at the end, just summarize the results and the hypothesis of your investigation, including the research question. And then the last step is evaluation. Mention a few strengths if you want. It's not really necessary, but do make sure to mention more weaknesses of your investigation and how did they affect the results, right? Recommend some variables or different methodologies that future research can conduct to expand your investigation. So these are the sources I took in order to complete this PowerPoint, this presentation, Canva presentation. I would like to thank you for listening to my M25 IB student bio explanation. Thank you.